You don't belong here. People like you scare customers." Officer Daniel Holt's voice cut through the quiet morning at Daisy's diner like a blade. Every head turned. Forks stopped midair. The words hung there, sharp, heavy, and humiliating. James Whitaker, a 59-year-old Black Navy veteran, sat in his usual booth by the window, his oatmeal half finished, his worn Navy cap resting on the table. He didn't move. He didn't flinch, but everyone could feel the tension tighten like a noose. James wasn't just another man passing through Augusta, Maine. To the regulars at Daisy's diner, he was family. Every Wednesday, rain or shine, he walked 3 miles from the shelter to this small brick diner. He always ordered the same thing: oatmeal with raisins, black coffee, and if it was fresh, a slice of apple pie. He always tipped exactly 22%. No matter how little he had, it wasn't about money, it was about honor. $1 for every year he survived, since the day he pulled 6 sailors out of a burning deck during a missile strike back in 1991. James never told anyone that story. Most people didn't know, but Holt didn't care about stories. He saw only what he wanted to see. A black man in a worn gray hoodie, shoes patched with duct tape, sitting alone in a corner booth. "You," Holt barked again, pointing his finger like an accusation. "Do you even belong here?" James slowly raised his eyes, calm, steady, deliberate. "I'm eating," he said softly. "Paid for it." Holt's partner, Officer Tara Vance, stepped closer. "Got a receipt?" Before James could answer, Lila, the 42-year-old waitress who had served him for years, turned from behind the counter. "He's a regular. Every Wednesday, paid in cash like always." Holt's cold gaze snapped toward her. "Did I ask you, ma'am?" Lila froze but didn't back down. She placed a mug of fresh coffee on James's table, sliding it gently toward him, her hand tray embling slightly. James picked it up, sipped slowly, and set it back down. His voice was quiet, but carried the weight of steel. "Lila's got my order. Check the register if you need proof." Holt stepped closer, towering over the booth, his shadow falling across the table. "ID. Now." James reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn VA card, the edges bent, the laminate peeling. He handed it over without a word. Holt glanced at it, scoffed, and handed it back. "No driver's license. Figures." "What? Are you homeless?" His voice was loud enough for the entire diner to hear. The insult landed like a slap. James took the card, placed it carefully back into his pocket, and looked Holt dead in the eye. "No house," he said evenly. "But I got a home right here in Augusta." The room went completely still. Tara Vance hesitated, glancing at James's name on her clipboard, whispering almost to herself, "Silver Star, Navy, 1991. But Holt ignored her. He leaned in, his voice dropping lower, but somehow sharper. "You're taking up space, pal. Folks don't want you here. Makes them nervous." That's when Lila snapped. She slammed her tray down on the counter, the sound echoing through the diner. "Nervous? He's been here longer than you've had a badge." Holt turned on her instantly, his face flushed red. "Stay out of this, ma'am." But Marcus, the 55-year-old diner owner, stepped out from behind the counter. "Officers," he said firmly. "You got a real reason to be here, or are you just looking for trouble?" Holt straightened his shoulders. "We got a call about a suspicious person." He lied without hesitation. Marcus frowned. "Who called?" Holt didn't answer. His silence said everything. James's fingers tapped gently against the table. Once, twice, 3 times. An old nervous habit from his Navy days. He'd been carrying this weight for years, and it was getting heavier. He spoke softly, the words deliberate but full of quiet exhaustion. "I haven't broken any laws, So why you talking to me like I did? Holt smirked, leaning in close. Because you're in my town, pal, and I decide what's out of place. Something inside James shifted. He closed his eyes for half a second, inhaled deeply, then reached into his hoodie pocket. Holt's hand twitched, fingers brushing the edge of his holster. What's that? James slowly pulled out an old, scratched Nokia flip phone. The hinge squeaked as he opened it. He pressed a number and held it to his ear. The entire diner went silent again. 2 rings, then a click. Sarah, he said quietly. It's happening again. Holt's jaw clenched. Who the hell did you just call? James closed the phone, set it down next to his worn cap, and answered without looking up. Someone who will listen. The tension deepened. Finally, Holt barked louder. Who the hell did you just call? James lifted his gaze and said in that steady, measured tone, Someone who outranks you. The room buzzed with nervous whispers. Lila leaned toward Marcus and whispered, He called her, didn't he? Marcus nodded, his jaw tightening. Holt slammed his palm against the counter. Don't play games with me, old man. Tara Vance glanced down at her tablet. Sergeant, his record's here. 20 years Navy, Silver Star, Gulf War veteran, saved 6 men during a missile strike. Holt snapped. I don't care if he saved the damn president, Tara. He doesn't belong here making my job harder. Marcus stepped forward. Your job? Your job is to serve and protect, not harass paying customers in my diner. Holt spun toward him, towering over Marcus. But Marcus didn't move. Lila spoke up, her voice trembling but defiant. You're embarrassing yourself, Daniel. Everyone here knows James. He's family to us. Holt sneered. Family? You calling this drifter family? James finally leaned forward. I wore this country's uniform for 20 years. I've bled for it. I've buried brothers for it. And right now the only person embarrassing themselves is you. Holt froze, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. You think that uniform means something to me? Out here, I make the rules, not you. That was when the small bell above the diner door jingled violently as it swung open, and a woman's sharp, commanding voice filled the room. Not today, Sergeant Holt. Not in my jurisdiction. Every head turned toward the door where Sarah Coleman stood, her dark blazer damp from rain, her badge held high, her piercing eyes locked on Holt. Deputy Director of the Department of Justice, Sarah Coleman, James's old Navy friend, had arrived. Holt blinked, confusion setting in. Deputy Director, he muttered. Sarah strode forward, her heels striking the linoleum like a countdown. She stopped barely a foot from him, holding her badge inches from his chest. Badge number, now. Holt hesitated, but finally muttered his number under his breath. Sarah nodded once, never breaking eye contact. Good. Now you're going to step back and explain exactly why you're harassing a decorated veteran in a public diner without probable cause. Holt stammered. We got a complaint about a suspicious person. Sarah's expression didn't change. No, you didn't. We monitor all active calls. There was no complaint. You walked in here, saw a black man sitting quietly with his breakfast, and decided to make him your problem. That stops now. The diner erupted into murmurs, customers whispering, phones coming out to record. Holt's ears burned red as he realized 6 phones were pointed at him. His ego refused to surrender. Ma'am, with all due respect, Sarah cut him off instantly. Respect? You forfeited respect the moment you laid your hands on your belt like he was a threat. Don't test me, Sergeant. Your body cam is live, your radio's open, and trust me, I'm listening to every word. Vance finally spoke up. Deputy Director, maybe we should step outside and sort this out. Sarah nodded. That's exactly what's going to happen. Both of you. Outside. Now, reluctantly, Holt turned and pushed through the door, the bell jangling violently as it slammed shut. Sarah turned to James, her voice softening. You okay? James nodded slowly. "I'm fine," he said quietly. "Just tired. Tired of proving I belong." She sat down across from him. "I know, but this time we're not letting it slide." James stared down into his coffee. After a long pause, he whispered, "Feels like it's never going to end." Sarah placed her hand gently over his. "Then we'll make it end." Outside, through rain-speckled windows, Holt could be seen pacing beside his cruiser, unaware that his body cam had captured every single second, every cruel word, every aggressive move. That video was already being routed through DOJ servers for review. By nightfall, the entire country would know James Whitaker's name. The rain outside came down harder as Sarah pushed open the door, striding toward the two officers by the cruiser. Inside, every customer pressed closer to the windows, phones ready. Daniel Holt stood stiffly, pacing like a caged animal. Tara Vance stood back, nervous, avoiding eye contact. Sarah stopped inches from Holt. "Sergeant Holt, this ends now." Holt shook his head. "With all due respect, ma'am, you don't walk into my town and tell me how to do my job." Sarah tilted her head. "Your job is to serve and protect, not humiliate veterans eating their breakfast. This isn't your town, Sergeant. This is my jurisdiction right now." Holt's voice rose. "He's a drifter, Deputy Director. Men like him stir trouble." Sarah stepped closer. "You want to talk about trouble? Let's talk about your body cam, Sergeant. It recorded every word you said, every step you took, every time your hand rested on that holster. So tell me again, how exactly you plan to explain to Washington why a decorated Navy veteran, a Silver Star recipient, was harassed in a public diner without PR or Babel cause?" Holt's face flushed crimson. He glanced toward Tara, who whispered, "She's right, Daniel. It's all on record." The crowd outside was growing. Bystanders pulling out phones, someone muttering, "This is going to go viral." Sarah spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "If anyone here recorded what happened inside the diner, keep those videos. Do not delete them. This is evidence." James had stepped outside now, his navy cap pulled low, shoulders squared despite the drizzle. He stopped behind Sarah, silent but steady. Holt's gaze snapped to him. "What? You called in backup, Whitaker? Think hiding behind a badge makes you untouchable?" James spoke, his voice deep and measured. "I called a friend, Daniel. Someone who remembers what loyalty looks like." Sarah turned slightly toward James. "You don't have to stand out here." James shook his head. "I've stood for this country in worse storms than this. I'm not moving." Holt scoffed. "This is ridiculous. He's homeless. He's loitering. I had every right." Sarah cut him off. "You had no right. You had bias, Sergeant. And today, it's on full display for the world to see." Traffic had slowed on Water Street. One teenager shouted, "It's on TikTok already. 200,000 views." Holt's face twitched as panic mixed with anger. Sarah lowered her voice, deliberate and unrelenting. "You have two options, Sergeant. Step back, write your report, and let DOJ handle this. Or double down and watch your badge hit the pavement by sundown." Holt stood frozen, chest heaving. After a long pause, he finally muttered, "Fine," taking one small step back, though his eyes stayed locked on James with resentment. Tara exhaled audibly. "I tried to de-escalate inside. I knew it was wrong." Sarah nodded curtly. "Then start making it right. It's not too late." Lila had stepped outside with Marcus, both holding untouched coffee. Lila's voice cracked. "You okay?" James gave a faint smile. "I've been worse." Marcus gripped his shoulder firmly. "You're not alone in this, brother." Sarah pulled out a tablet, tapping quickly before holding it toward Holt and Tara. "DOJ's ethics review team will be in Augusta within 48 hours. Until then, Sergeant, you are to stand down from any contact with Mr. Whitaker unless authorized by my office. Is that understood?" Holt clenched his jaw. Understood. Tara answered quickly. Yes, ma'am. Sarah turned back toward James, speaking quietly. You didn't deserve this. Not today. Not ever. James exhaled slowly, rain running down his face. Feels like I keep fighting the same war, Sarah. Just different uniforms now. She squeezed his shoulder gently. Then we fight it together this time. The hum of voices grew louder, notifications pinging as clips began spreading online faster than anyone expected. James stood quietly, head slightly bowed, having no idea that by end of night, his name would be trending nationwide. By noon, the storm outside had slowed to a drizzle. But the storm online was just beginning. James sat in his usual booth, having no idea his life was about to change forever. Lila was first to notice, her phone buzzing non-stop until she whispered, Oh my God, James, it's online. Marcus leaned over, squinting at the screen where body cam footage was already climbing past 1.5 million views on TikTok. Comments exploded with outrage and disbelief. The footage wasn't just viral. It was everywhere. X, Facebook, TikTok, Reddit, news blogs. Captions flooded timelines. Decorated Navy veteran harassed by Augusta police. This is how we treat our heroes. Silver Star recipient targeted for being homeless. Hashtags surged. Hashtag justice. For James / Augusta veteran / stand with Whitaker. Inside Daisy's, phones buzzed. Conversations overlapped as regulars sat shoulder to shoulder with strangers who'd wandered in just to see the booth where the veteran sat. Marcus grumbled, Feels like a circus. A local Wabi TV anchor rep ordered live from outside the police station. Augusta police under investigation after viral video shows alleged harassment of a decorated Navy veteran. James barely touched his oatmeal, staring at steam rising from the bowl, his mind somewhere far away. Sarah slid into the booth, scrolling through her tablet. It's spreading faster than I expected. CNN just picked it up. Lila gasped. CNN! Sarah leaned closer, lowering her voice. James, this isn't just Augusta anymore. This is national. Every decision from this point forward matters. James sighed. I never asked for any of this, Sarah. She reached across the table. I know, but sometimes the fight finds you. Outside, crowds gathered on Water Street, drawn by live streams. Hand-painted signs appeared. I am James Whitaker. Respect our veterans. Dignity isn't optional. A teenager burst through the door, phone in hand. James, man, you're trending #2 nationwide. 2.7 million views on TikTok and Twitter's at 3.4 million. James didn't look up, shaking his head. I'm not a hashtag, kid. Lila squeezed his shoulder. Maybe not, but maybe it's time they see you. By evening, NBC, ABC, and Fox all ran the story during primetime broadcasts. Headlines blazing. Body cam footage sparks DOJ investigation. Augusta PD under fire. Harassment of Silver Star veteran prompts national outrage. Donations flooded into a crowdfunding campaign. Their initial goal of $10,000 shattered within 2 hours, rocketing past $120,000 by nightfall. Marcus slid a printed receipt toward James. People want to help you, man. James pushed it back gently. I don't need their money. Lila chimed in softly. Maybe not, but you deserve their respect, and they're giving it to you. With support came inevitable backlash. Anonymous trolls filled comment sections calling James a professional victim. Others questioned his service twists, ting fragments of his past. Sarah, seeing the effect on his face, took the borrowed phone from him gently. Don't look at that, James. None of them know you. None of them were there in 91. I was. I saw you carry those men through fire. Meanwhile, Holt's world collapsed in real time. Within 12 hours, journalists had unearthed 7 prior complaints against him for racial profiling, 3 involving excessive force. Tara Vance quietly deleted her social media accounts, considering resignation before the DOJ finished its review. By midnight, Sarah's phone buzzed non-stop. DOJ headquarters requesting updates every 30 minutes. The Attorney General's office issuing statements promising full transparency. James stared at her. All this because of breakfast. Sarah shook her head. No, James. All this because they finally saw you. He allowed himself a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Outside, news vans lined the street. Satellite dishes pointed skyward, bright lights illuminating daisies like a stage. The crowd stretched nearly a block, chants growing louder. Justice for James! Justice for James! A reporter from NBC approached Sarah. Deputy Director Coleman, is James Whitaker safe? Sarah nodded firmly. He is safe and he is not alone. We are reviewing every second of footage and the Department of Justice will ensure accountability. Through it all, James sat quietly in his booth, untouched slice of apple pie in front of him, his old Navy cap folded by his side, staring out the rain-streaked window at the growing crowd. Though his name echoed across millions of screens, inside he still felt like the same man who had walked 3 miles for simple breakfast, still carrying ghosts of battles fought decades ago, still longing for dignity more than fame. As the chants outside grew louder, he whispered so soft even Lila barely caught it. I didn't want any of this. Sarah, seated across from him, met his gaze with quiet certainty. Maybe not, James. But maybe this time the country needed you. By Friday morning, Augusta no longer felt like the quiet town James had known. Satellite trucks crowded Water Street. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder outside Daisy's. Microphones and cameras pointed at every door and window. Yet inside, the man at the center of it all sat quietly in his corner booth, staring at cold coffee as if willing the world to go away. Lila placed a fresh pot in front of him. James, you okay? He rubbed a hand over his face, rough fingers catching on stubble. Feels like I woke up in someone else's life. Sarah slid into the booth, her tablet buzzing with updates from Washington. James, we need to talk about what's next. He shook his head slowly. I didn't ask for next, Sarah. I wanted breakfast. I wanted quiet. Now I can't walk outside without people chanting my name. Sarah's tone softened. I know, but this isn't just about you anymore. Congress is asking questions. The Attorney General is briefing the President. Every network is covering this non-stop. You've become the face of something bigger than Augusta. James leaned back. Bigger than me, huh? That's funny because it feels like everyone's talking about me without knowing a damn thing about me. Lila squeezed his shoulder. Then tell them, James. Tell them who you are. He shook his head. I'm no hero. Sarah leaned in. No, but you are proof. Proof of how we treat the people who've given everything and get nothing back. That's why people care. Outside, the crowd swelled larger by the hour, chants mixing with news anchors broadcasting live. Marcus paced behind the counter, frustrated by the endless noise, but refusing to close. He needs this place, Lila. As long as James wants his booth, this diner stays open. The bell jingled, and a man in a sharp gray suit stepped inside. David Hall, Veterans Legal Alliance, Washington, D.C. We'd like to represent you pro bono. James waved him off gently. I'm not suing anyone. David hesitated. James, this isn't just about you. It's about every veteran sleeping under a bridge while the country forgets their names. If you let us, we can make sure this moment matters. James didn't respond. David finally nodded, leaving a business card on the table before stepping back into the storm of cameras. Sarah's tablet chimed. 7 formal complaints filed against Augusta PD in the last 48 hours, 4 directly naming Holt. She sighed. They're panicking, James. This is the moment to push for change. He looked up finally, dark eyes weary but steady. Change. Feels like the only thing that changes is the names on the uniforms. Lila leaned down, whispering softly. You're wrong this time. People are listening. She was right. That morning, CNN reported 8 million combined views across TikTok and X. By noon, hashtags linked to James's name had passed 50 million impressions. Crowdfunding campaigns had raised nearly $400,000 for veterans' housing initiatives. Statements poured in from national organizations demanding reform. Members of Congress tweeted outrage, vowing investigations and promising hearings. But James avoided the TV, avoided the news apps, avoided the endless scroll of strangers' opinions. Instead, he spent most of the afternoon sitting quietly, hands wrapped around his mug, staring out at the rain-speckled street. By late afternoon, a local veterans group arrived unannounced. A dozen men and women in worn caps and jackets stood shoulder to shoulder outside Daisy's, saluting James through the window. His breath caught slightly, hand trembling just enough for Lila to see. She whispered softly, "They came for you." He shook his head. "They came for all of us." The veterans filed into the diner, filling the narrow aisle. The eldest, a frail man in his 80s leaning on a cane, stepped forward. Eddie Officer Whitaker. We didn't forget what you did back then, and we won't let them forget now." James swallowed hard, unable to speak, his hand gripping the table until his knuckles turned white. With visibility came pressure. By evening, the governor of Maine released a statement calling the video deeply troubling and promising full accountability. The White House issued a rare briefing acknowledging urgent need to address systemic bias and veterans' homelessness nationwide. National talk shows booked segments overnight. Activists organized marches in 6 states. Daisy's became an unlikely epicenter for a growing movement. James still resisted the role thrust upon him, muttering to Sarah, "I didn't sign up to be anyone's symbol." Sarah answered firmly, "You didn't have to. You became one the moment Holt walked through that door." Later that night, after the crowd thinned and cameras shifted elsewhere, James walked the 3 blocks back to the shelter in silence. Sarah walked beside him. At the worn steps, he stopped, staring at the flickering porch light. "Feels strange having the world know your name, but not know you." Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Then let them hear your voice, James. Tell them what you've carried." He didn't answer, only nodded faintly before pushing the door open and disappearing into the dim hallway, leaving Sarah standing outside, her expression set, already planning what came next. The hearings, the policies, the changes they'd fight for. As she glanced back at the crowd still chanting softly outside Daisy's, she realized the story had grown far beyond Augusta. James Whitaker's quiet dignity had become a mirror, forcing the country to confront not just what happened in a diner on Water Street, but how it treated those who had given everything and been forgotten. Though James didn't want the spotlight, he couldn't escape it now. The weight of truth had found him, and the nation wasn't going to look away. By Monday morning, Augusta woke to a different reality. For the first time in decades, the Augusta Police Department stood under the harsh glare of federal investigation. Satellite trucks still lined Water Street, though now they'd shifted toward City Hall, where Sarah held a closed-door briefing with state officials, laying out evidence from Holt's body cam alongside 7 years of documented complaints. At Daisy's, James sat in his corner booth sipping coffee, posture relaxed but eyes distant as the television carried breaking news. Sergeant Daniel Holt has been placed on immediate unpaid suspension pending DOJ investigation, while his partner, Officer Tara Vance, has officially submitted her resignation, citing ethical concerns. Marcus muttered behind the counter, "About damn time." Lila placed fresh pie in front of James. "They're finally listening." James didn't answer right away, gaze fixed on headlines scrolling across the screen. "Feels strange seeing their names on TV instead of mine." Sarah stepped back into the diner, pulling off her blazer and sliding into the booth. "DOJ has taken control of the case," she said simply. "Augusta PD will comply or face federal intervention." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Never thought I'd see the day." Sarah scrolled through notifications. The department's Internal Affairs Division is collapsing under scrutiny. They've already uncovered 8 additional profiling incidents tied to Holt, 2 involving minors. The state attorney general is opening a broader review of police conduct across Maine. Lila shook her head. "So much damage from one man." Sarah corrected gently. "Not just one man, Lila. This goes deeper than Holt. He was the spark, not the fire." Outside, small groups of protesters gathered in the drizzle, holding signs and chanting softly, "Justice for James." Across the street, a handful of counter-protesters waved, banners reading, "Back the badge," though their voices were drowned out by growing supporters. James noticed none of it, attention fixed on the borrowed tablet Sarah handed him, scrolling through an article showing veterans across the country marching in solidarity, holding signs with his name, his face, his story. His jaw tightened. "They're making me into something I'm not." Sarah reached across the table. "You're not a symbol by choice, James. You're a reminder. Right now, the country needs reminding." He sighed. "Feels heavy." Sarah nodded, squeezing his hand briefly. "It is heavy, but you're not carrying it alone anymore." Later that afternoon, Augusta's mayor held a press conference promising sweeping reforms, including mandatory bias training, body cam audits, and establishment of an independent civilian review board. Her voice shaky under national spotlight. What happened to Mr. Whitaker was unacceptable, and Augusta must take responsibility. Just blocks away, Holt sat stone-faced during a disciplinary hearing, refusing to answer questions without his union representative. His once commanding presence reduced to silence as DOJ's investigative team projected clips from his own body cam for the panel. Every sneer, every taunt, every aggressive gesture laid bare. Tara Vance had quietly cleared out her locker that morning, her resignation letter handwritten and brief. "I failed to uphold my oath. I will not fail again." Sarah, reading the statement aloud to James over lunch, glanced up to find him nodding. "She made her choice. Maybe she finds peace now." By evening, DOJ released a preliminary report citing significant evidence of systemic misconduct within Augusta PD. The Attorney General announced plans for a statewide review of law enforcement practices, prompting news anchors to declare, "This case may set a national precedent for handling racial bias and brand protections." While the nation debated policies and procedures, James wrestled with quieter battles. At the shelter that night, sitting on the edge of his cot, he stared at the VA housing voucher Sarah had placed in his hand. "You earned this," she'd told him, but he couldn't shake the thought. Did I earn it? Or did the cameras? Outside the shelter, local high school students had taped handwritten notes to the door. Messages like, "Thank you for your service," and "You're not invisible anymore." When James found them the next morning, he folded one carefully and slid it into his wallet, saying nothing but carrying it everywhere. Inside Daisy's, Marcus installed a small brass plaque above James's booth without telling him, engraved with 5 simple words, "Reserved for our hero, James." When James noticed it, he stared for a long moment before murmuring, "I'm no hero." Marcus, wiping down the counter, called back without looking up, "You don't get to decide that, brother." Sarah spent most nights on conference calls with Washington, coordinating next steps while fielding calls from national advocacy groups, veterans organizations, and lawmakers eager to leverage James's story for broader reforms. When she returned to the diner late Tuesday night, exhausted but energized, she slid beside James and whispered, "We're getting calls from Chicago, Dallas, Oakland. People are asking how they can help." James gave a faint smile. "Maybe they start by seeing us." Sarah nodded. "Exactly. Seeing you, James, means seeing every veteran who's been overlooked. That's the change you're making." Across the country, other stories began surfacing. Veterans sharing experiences of harassment, discrimination, and homelessness under the trending tag #IamJamesWhitaker. The hashtag grew from a local rallying cry into a national movement within 72 hours, amplified by prominent voices from politics, sports, and Hollywood. James remained largely disconnected from it all, refusing interviews, declining appearances, insisting quietly to Sarah, "I'm not built for cameras, I just want my life back." Sarah respected that, shielding him where she could. But even she knew there was no going back. The world had seen him now, and through him, the world had seen itself. By week's end, Augusta PD had suspended 3 additional officers linked to prior profiling complaints. The city council voted unanimously to approve funding for expanded housing programs for veterans. DOJ announced plans to host a national summit on bias and policing reform, inviting James to attend as guest of honor. When Sarah told him, he hesitated, staring at the floor before replying softly, "If it means fewer kids end up where I am, then yeah, I'll go." His voice quiet but certain, carrying the weight of a man who never asked to lead but refused to stand aside when the moment demanded it. That night, as he left Daisy's and walked slowly back toward the shelter under a sky beginning to clear after days of rain, James paused halfway down Water Street, turning to look back at the neon sign glowing faintly in the dark, his reflection blurred in puddles at his feet. For the first time since the confrontation, he let himself breathe deeply, cold air filling his lungs as he whispered softly to no one in particular, "Maybe we're finally being seen." Tuesday morning arrived with skies finally clear over Augusta. Inside Daisy's, cameras lined the back walls. Reporters waited outside and locals filled every seat, leaving only one booth untouched: James Whitaker's. He stood at the front of the diner now, his old Navy cap resting in his hand, posture straight but humble, his deep voice steady as he looked around at faces both familiar and new. "I'm not a hero," he began softly, pausing long enough for his words to settle. "I'm just a man who served, who fought, who lost more to Han you'll ever know. And all I wanted last Wednesday was a hot cup of coffee and a little peace." The diner stayed silent, every person leaning forward as he continued. "I wore this uniform for 20 years. Through storms, through fire, through nights I thought I'd never see morning. And I buried brothers who never made it home. Men who gave everything they had to a country that promised to remember them. But too often it doesn't." His voice caught briefly before he steadied it again, glancing down at the cap in his hand. "You didn't see those men. You didn't see the deck burning beneath our feet, the screams, the smoke, the choices we had to make in seconds. But I did, and I carry them with me every day." Sarah sat near the counter, nodding quietly as James raised his gaze, his voice growing stronger. "I came home believing we'd earned something. Respect, dignity, a place at the table. But instead, too many of us came home to silence, to shadows, to being unseen until a body cam catches us being harassed over breakfast." A murmur swept through the diner, but James held up a hand gently. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because this isn't just about me. There are thousands like me. Veterans sleeping in shelters, working odd jobs, walking into diners, just hoping for a little humanity. And they deserve better. We all do. Outside, a growing crowd stood quietly, listening through open windows as James's voice carried beyond the walls, news cameras broadcasting live to millions nationwide. Lila stood near the coffee machine, wiping her eyes while Marcus leaned against the counter, pride and anger mixing in his expression. James went on, his tone low but commanding. Respect isn't charity. It isn't pity. It isn't